So welcome everybody to the second iteration of training that we have here today with our new system that we're using called MissionEdge. And it is going to be the way that we're going to manage ROS qualifications and deployments within the ROS program as a whole, but also across the community of state organizations that have determined who their state ROS coordinator is and who they have established as their agency having jurisdiction. So again, if you could double check your mute button, that would be great. I'm hearing some background noise, so please double check your mute. And we are going to go ahead and get started today with a little bit of a kickoff. But before we get into some of the details of the system, I did want to go over just a quick slide with all of you on how we've organized the structure of the system, just for your perspective here. So what we'd like to have you take away from this slide is the MissionEdge system is organized under the CRCPD ROS organization. And we have a big thank you to Chainbridge for working with us at CRCPD, and a big thank you to CRCPD for working on this to establish this organization and allow us to have this really important structure to, I think, move us into the next stage of qualification management in a really effective way. So the way we've structured this is we have 31 state organizations that have designated a ROS coordinator. They all went through a training earlier this week to know how to manage the state organizations that were created and how to help all of you as various participants inside the system. And so this is an example. These are not the way that the organizations are set. The ones with dashes may or may not end up with sub-organizations. But right now, each state has an organization, and they'll be able to determine how they would like to regionalize or associate their ROS across their specific state. Any of the ROS that don't have or that are in a state that does not have a state ROS coordinator or an AHJ that's been designated live under the bigger CRCPD ROS organization. And ROS can be moved from state to state or from the bigger organization to their state or vice versa by the larger CRCPD organization. So as you are logging into the system and you see where you're structured, if you're in the wrong state or you think you should be a part of a state, please let us know. We'll get you moved. We did our best guess of where you were located and what state you're in. But the whole idea is there that you have more visualization and you guys can inform us a little bit more clearly on where you should be situated in the organization. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Brendan Palmer with Chainbridge to just do a little bit of an introduction. And again, thank you, Chainbridge, for the opportunity to use this system.
Angela, real quick, sorry, it looks like somebody has a question someone has a hand up.
Yes, please. I'm just trying to understand. You said there was training offered to the people who identified as state coordinators. How does that training get initiated for those who are coming in to the program?
Yeah, so the training that we did on Monday was how to use the MissionEdge system as a state ROS coordinator or an agency having jurisdiction. We also recorded that session. So anyone new coming in will be able to watch that video, just like today's session is being recorded. So any ROS that couldn't attend today can watch this session. So you will be able to go back to the recorded session if necessary. Did that answer your question?
I think so. I'm just trying to create the coordinated position for Massachusetts, and I've just been back and forth on emails, and it just was a little confusing to me how this gets set up. I appreciate this training today, so I guess I'll have to go back and watch that particular episode, and hopefully get our state listed separately.
Yeah, so the training is specifically for how to use the system. Now, to get your state set up, I would work with Bill Irwin, and I know, Bill, you're on today with us as well.
Yep.
I would work with Bill Irwin on how to get that actually designated to be a separate state and such.
Yeah,
so
I think he's aware. Thank you.
All right, Brendan, go ahead.
Thanks, Angela. I'll try to be brief. We've got busy day this Friday. My name is Brendan Palmer. I'm the Director of CBRN Programs at Chainbridge Technologies. We are the developers of the Rad Responder CBRN Responder Network, and we've been working with this community in excess of a decade, I believe. The MissionEdge system that you're about to see is relatively new. We've been working with a number of state entities who are using it now, such as California Office of Emergency Services and some private sector organizations as well. And so we're excited to get you into the system. We're looking forward to any feedback that you may have. We're happy to work with CRCPD to provide these licenses to this ROS community. If you have interest outside of ROS with the system or their agencies, please feel free to reach out. Angela can help coordinate any communications for that, but appreciate your time and look forward to your feedback on this capability. Thanks, Angela.
All right, so we'll turn over to Dave with Chainbridge to kind of go over the system as a whole, and we'll dive into some of the details that you'll need to know to effectively use the system. So Dave, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name's Dave Burns. I'm project manager here at Chainbridge. Thanks for joining today's basic training for the responder portal in MissionEdge. I'm also joined by my colleague Yamin Ezzeddine, who I will be passing over to in a little bit. If you have any questions in the chat, please enter.
So you can vacuum now, the way they're doing this meeting.
And please mute yourself. We'll be providing you with an overview of the software you'll be using. And we're going to log into the responder portal, update some settings, check into a deployment, and respond to a message. And you can follow along from your computer or phone if you would like to. If you aren't already using MissionEdge, you should have received an account invitation from support@missionedge.com. If you don't have a MissionEdge account, please enter your name and email in the chat and we'll support you there. And you can access the responder portal from your laptop or phone, and we'll walk through the login process a little bit later in the training. Any issues, please enter in the chat. So CRCPD is changing how it manages the credentialing, deployment, and tracking of field deployable resources. You'll be using a new piece of software called MissionEdge. And what does this mean for you? You'll be using MissionEdge before, during, and after deployments to receive and respond to deployment assignments, check in and check out of deployment, perform daily safety checks depending on your organization, respond to any ad hoc messages or data calls. You can plan your availability, and in between the deployments, you'll use position task books or PTBs to track the classes and tasks that you'll need to become qualified for disaster deployment. So what is MissionEdge? MissionEdge is a deployable workforce management system that allows an organization to plan, prepare, deploy, and sustain the people and equipment needed to effectively respond to a disaster. It's based on our nearly 20 years of experience building similar systems for the Department of Energy, HHS, CDC, and the private sector, as well as tools for FEMA such as FEMA Grants Manager and a similar deployment tool. MissionEdge has two user interfaces, the Mission Manager and the Responder Portal. The Mission Manager is designed for admin and support personnel responsible for managing disasters across all of CRCPD ROS and for your training team. In contrast, the Responder Portal allows an individual staff member to manage their own deployments and qualifications right from their smartphone. While some of you may be provided with access to the Mission Manager, today's training will focus on the Responder Portal. If you have any questions or need additional support, you can always email MissionEdge support for technical support at missionedge.com, and for organizational support, Angela will be able to help you with her email address listed here as well. And as you'll see during the training, you can access support information directly from the Responder Portal itself. Before jumping into the demo, please feel free to answer any questions in the chat regarding the intro material or how to get support. If you need immediate support, you can also raise your hand if you'd like us to call on you. But if you have a longer question, please stay on and we'll address at the end of the demo. So we are just about ready to switch over to see the system in action. starting with these login steps. Yaman, are you seeing any issues before we switch over?
No, I think we're good to keep moving.
And let me share my other screen then. And here we are at MissionEdge.com. Let's go over how to sign in. You go to www.missionedge.com. Please bookmark that URL. Click sign in. And you can enter your username or email, password. Oops. Make sure you put in the correct passwords. And then you will choose Mission Manager or Responder Portal, depending on your access, and we're going into the Responder Portal. We are now looking at my Responder Portal account. In general, white tiles indicate things you can always do. Yellow, orange, and red tiles are things that you should be doing or that MissionEdge wants to draw your attention to, and they'll always be at the top of your portal. While green tiles, when shown, are informational. Sorry, I don't have any green tiles to show you. First thing we're going to do is scroll down towards the bottom to contact details. We're going to look at updates you can make here. Your email address is here and has been configured for you. Email and phone numbers were put in the system categorized as your work contacts. If you're using a personal phone or email, you can edit and uncheck the work option as fitting. We're going to validate my phone, and feel free to follow along if you are stepping through the system yourself, but I'll choose edit. I'm using a mobile phone. I am going to click through everything to allow text and receive notifications. And when you do say that you will receive notifications, you have to understand and agree to SMS messaging notification. So let's save. And in order to validate, as you can see, it says unvalidated, we'll hit resend code. And I have just received on this phone text message with a code to validate. Comes from a 202 number. I'll hit close and enter code. And phone numbers validated successfully. If for some reason you don't have a phone number in here to validate and you want to enter a new one, do so as such, new phone. And then it's a very similar process to what we just stepped through. If you have a landline phone and instead of mobile, you can do the same process. You won't click on mobile or text or notifications. And it will validate with a phone call instead of a text message. So I'm getting another message because I'm redoing, jumping straight to the validate code. And success. As well, at the bottom of this contact details, you see you can update your location. You'll note that you can't click save unless you've actually made an edit here. I'm just going to make a change to show how that works. And successfully updated. To go back to the dashboard, always at the top of the screen in the banner, click here, and we're back to where we began. And the next thing we'll look at is account management, which is down here just next to the contact details tile. Here you can change your password, security question. Most apt right now is the username and possibly your preferred first name. I'm Dave. I was born David, but I go by Dave, so I've entered Dave, and the system addresses me as such. Feel free to do the same. Please do use a nickname or short name that you would like to use professionally. And for the username, this is great for login, something memorable that doesn't have to be the entire email address. So when you log in, you can use your username or your email address, and having something shorter that's easy to remember is pretty good. It does have to be unique. So if someone else has your chosen username, you can append it to, or come up with something else that you like. And I'm going to go back to the dashboard. We'll look at one more thing before I pass over to my teammate. Just above contact details here, you can see availability. And you don't have to do anything here, but we wanted to show you that it exists and how it works. I'll be out for Thanksgiving. And you can see the calendar at the bottom. If you want to enter a request, it's at the top of the screen there. This is not required, it's just showing you the system. And we're going to switch to Yaman now. It's going to walk us through some other parts of the system.
Yep, let me take over here. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Good to go. Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Yaman, and I'm going to be walking us through a couple of the crucial aspects of the system that many of you will be using. First, let's see how to accept a deployment. When you get a deployment request, you're going to get an email letting you know that you've been deployed, and you're going to get this deployment tile on your responder portal. This tile is going to give you basic info about your deployment, and we can click on it to get even more info and to step through the deployment statuses. So let's go ahead and click on that. It says you've been requested to deploy. I can scroll down and look at all kinds of info for this deployment. What is the event? Where is my specific duty station? Any notes for the event or my deployment? My deployed position and important dates like when I need to start traveling, when I should arrive and start my deployment, and when I should be leaving the deployment. As well, at the bottom, we have event documents. So if there are any important documents for this event that your event coordinator wants you to have during your deployment, you can find it here, download it, and view it here. Okay, and so we can see at the top, we've got decline and accept buttons. If we do decline, it's going to ask for a reason, and this is going to be sent to the person that deployed us so they know that we were not able to be deployed. But I am going to go ahead and hit accept to move us forward from requested to pending check-in. So I've accepted the deployment. I'm now pending check-in. So whenever I go and I actually go into the field, that's when I would come in and I would check in. I can also log when I began travel. So let's say when is my scheduled travel start is on the 6th of November. So on the 6th, I hit this button. Are you sure you wish to record that you've started travel? Yes. When I get there and I'm ready to start my actual deployment work, I can go ahead and check in. You are now deployed. For some events and some orgs, you may be required to complete daily accountability when you are deployed. This means you're going to get a text each day letting you know you need to respond with a 1 so that your event manager knows that you're safe. Not all deployments will require this, and it'll be a case-by-case basis. Once we are done with our deployment and we're ready to leave the site, we can go ahead and hit checkout. This will indicate we have left the deployment, but we are not quite home yet. Once we arrive at home and we are totally safe and done with this deployment, we hit demobilize. And you are now demobilized. You are done with this deployment. And if we go back to our dashboard, we'll see that tile is no longer here because we're no longer deployed. Okay. Next, let's take a look at the messages tile. So if we scroll, oh, it's at the top now, messages and requests. A few minutes ago, I sent myself and everyone else in this meeting, well, everyone that's active in MissionEdge currently, a training survey so that you guys can see what a message looks like, and you can provide some critical feedback that helps us make these trainings even better and the system even better for you. So let's see how you would go about answering that survey. So we've got this messages and requests tile. We'll click into that. If you've got more than one message, you're going to be able to choose which one to respond to. If you've only got one, it's going to go ahead and take you straight to it. And we can see here, subject and message, thank you for attending. Please answer the survey questions. And at the bottom, we have our questions. Did you have any trouble signing in? Nope. It's great. I am extremely comfortable. Presenters did great. And how can it be improved? And once you've filled out all of this information, go ahead and hit acknowledge. You can add any comments and acknowledge. And that message has now been completed, and your admin on the other side of this site, which we'll get to see later, is going to be able to see your responses and use that feedback and things like that.
Hey, I'm going to jump in here. I see Bill has his hand up. Bill, did you want to add something to deployments or to this messaging section?
Actually, it goes back to the last, Angela. I wanted to ask about the event coordinator role relative to deployments. Is that established by a particular level of administrator or something like that?
Yeah, so I'll let Yaman talk a little bit about the permission side, but I believe that every state organization, their state ROS coordinator and their AHJ have administrator privileges for their specific state org. So they will be able to create events and make these deployment requests across their own state. And then if it's going to cross state orgs, then the larger CRCPD org and those administrators would have to do that piece if it's for the larger community. But within each state on their own, they would have those permissions. But Yaman, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's totally correct. And beyond that, if those coordinators were to want to bring on other people to support in that effort, they can assign admin roles. They can give people full access, or they can say you are a operations manager and just have them work on the deployment side of things for their state. Yeah.
Perfect. Just like RAD responder event coordinators. Thank you. Answered my question.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. So next, let's go back to our dashboard, and we're going to scroll down to our PTBs. So let's take a look at a position task book. So I've got my finance admin section chief PTB here. I'm going to click on it and it'll take me into it. PTBs are very important. A PTB, or a position task book, is a collection of credentialing requirements which you must complete to be considered fully qualified in a given deployable position. These typically include a series of training courses as well as tasks, which will need to be observed by an assigned PTB evaluator, who can then grant you endorsements for those tasks. Question in the chat. Angela, I think that one's for you.
Yes, MissionEdge is going to replace one responder for the ROS community.
So once you've completed all the required trainings and received all the endorsements for your tasks, you'll be able to submit your PTB for the final review and approval. Upon approval, you will be considered fully qualified for the given position. So let's go ahead and look through this PTB, see what it looks like. So we've got our general information, what the position is. We can look at its status. So general, when it was issued, what percentage of the trainings tasks are completed, and the overall completion percentage. Then we can see a list of our PTB evaluators if we have any, a list of the training courses that are required, if they're complete or not, as well as a list of our behaviors and tasks that need to be signed off on by an evaluator. We'll also see at the bottom, you have comments, documents, and messages. So through the PTB, you can record comments, attach documents, and even send messages to your evaluators, qualification staff, training staff, and it'll all be tracked within the PTB. So you have that, you always have that historical record. So for the training requirements I mentioned, in order to have those completed in MissionEdge, you're going to have to create training credit requests. So we can see right on the PTB, we have a button called Request Training Credit. This will allow you to select the effective date of the training, attach the certificate, and then pick the training itself. By default, it's going to show you the trainings that are required for this PTB. So you fill all this out, select the training, and request credit. Your admin on the mission manager side of the site is going to review your request, look at your certificate, and award you credit for that training. Once you've got credit, it's going to automatically check that off on your PTB as completed. So that's trainings. You also have your tasks, and the way tasks get completed is you have an evaluator observe you out in the field or during an exercise, and they sign off on your tasks for you. And the way to get an evaluator, we can see here PTB evaluators, we have a manage button. We can click that button and we've got request evaluator. And this is going to pull up a list of personnel that are either qualification staff for your org, personnel that are already qualified in this position, meaning they already hold the position itself, or that your organization has deemed authorized to be an evaluator, whether or not they hold that position. Looks like we have a question, who approves the training request? So your organization has, Angela, is it the coordinators that are assigned as the people to review the training requests?
Yeah, so in each state organization, the state ROS coordinator or the AHJ will be able to approve the training requests. And again, this is all centered around the ROS organization and the ROS credentials. And so if you're putting other trainings in, I'm not sure who would actually approve those, but if they're related to the ROS required trainings or prerequisites or things like that, then the state ROS coordinator will be able to do that, and or the CRCPD ROS program people as well. So hopefully your state is doing it, but it may take a little while for us to bring states on board or to get everybody up to speed on how to do that. I also see Brian Iverson has his hand up. What kind of question do you have, Brian?
Apologies, a little slow coming off mute. Thank you, Angela. I happen to be one of those that would be approving training requests, and I have one that's gone a little sideways. The student put in a request for training credit for PER 388, but they attached a certificate for AWR 923 instead. Should I reject it and have them resubmit, or are they able to make changes to a request as need be?
So you would reject it, and when you do, you're going to have a comment, and you leave in that comment box, the wrong certificate was attached, please resubmit with the correct one. And then that person will get an email saying, hey, your request was rejected, and it'll show your comment, so they'll know why, and then they can resubmit it with the correct certificate.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely. So going back to our PTB here, we pick our evaluator and we hit request at the very bottom, and that's going to create a request for someone to be the evaluator for our PTB. Now let's look at what it's like on the other side of this. If you were to receive a request, how you could accept it and how you would go about signing off on the tasks on a PTB. So let me go back to my dashboard here. Before this training, I had Dave send me a PTB evaluator request. So I have this approval requests and workflows tile because I have a pending workflow. I can go into that. Let me find the one that Dave sent. Is it gone? There it is. So I can see here PTB evaluator request, Dave Burns for the medical unit leader position type 2. I can click into that and I can see more information about the request and about the position that he is working on becoming qualified in. I can review all the information and then say, yes, I will be Dave's evaluator. Once that has been approved, I can go back to my dashboard and I'll see now, along with my open PTB, I also have this trainee/candidate tile. So these are people that I am the evaluator for. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And if I have more than one person that I'm evaluating, it'll give me a list. If I only have one, it's going to automatically take me to that one. But in this case, I've got 4, so I'm going to go ahead and pick Dave's PTB. And you'll notice the view looks very identical to what our own PTB looks like. The main difference is here on the right, you've got these grant endorsement buttons. And so when we're out in the field, I can observe Dave. I can hit grant endorsements on his behaviors and tasks. I can select what kind of event that we are currently at, and it will display the tasks that I can sign off on, right? Some tasks may be only at an actual incident. Some can be as part of a tabletop exercise. So we'll go ahead and pick the type of event it is and attach some information about the event itself. And it's going to pull up all of the tasks from Dave's PTB that I can endorse. So I can look through. Okay, did Dave obtain, assemble, and prepare information? Yes, he did. Did Dave communicate priorities? Yes. Dave forgot to report unexpected occurrences, so I'm not going to check that. And I can go through and check every task that I observed Dave completing during this exercise or incident. And then I hit endorse. It's going to give me a summary of what I'm about to do. I'm about to sign my name on Dave's PTB on today's date, saying I'm endorsing these 2 tasks. And I hit endorse, and now those 2 tasks were successfully endorsed and are now complete on Dave's PTB. Okay, and so that was PTB's sort of end-to-end. The only thing we didn't get to see is when a PTB is completed, you'll get a submit button at the top of your PTB. You click that, and then it goes off for review. Okay. Next, let's take a look at our responder profile. So going back to our dashboard, we've looked at all of these tiles already. We've got our responder profile. And so this is going to be your one-stop shop for everything, all the data that you have for your profile in MissionEdge. We can see our position task books that are assigned to us, their status, their completion percentage, any positions we are fully qualified in. You know, we've completed the position task book and it's been approved, as well as a bunch of additional information like our deployment history is shown here. So as you start getting deployments in MissionEdge, you'll have a full history saved here for you to reference whenever you need to. We also have our training, education, certifications, languages that can be added and managed here, as well as we can attach documents to our profile if we need to. And at the top of our profile, we've got these 2 buttons. We've got the red card, which is essentially a snapshot of all of our qualifications. It'll show you your candidate positions, the ones that you have PTBs for and are working towards, as well as your fully qualified positions and certifications. And this is meant to be a quick export that you can then print out and wear on a lanyard or just as a physical piece of paper if you need it for any incident. You also have this export, which is a much more comprehensive export of your full profile. It's going to take all of the information in all of these panels and export it out into a spreadsheet for you to have. So it's sort of your all-in-one resume here in terms of MissionEdge credentialing and deployments. Okay, and finally, the last thing. The very bottom of your responder portal, you're going to find this need help tile. So anytime you're not sure what you should be doing or how to do something, or something seems broken, or you don't know who to message, you can go to your need help tile. And I don't have any set for my organization, but for your organization, you'll be able to see Angela is listed as one of your support points of contact. And as more and more of the coordinators start getting into the system, I think we'll start seeing more and more contact information added here for you to reach out to. You can also find any support documents that your organization uploads that might be useful to you. It's all here. Okay. So that is the responder portal within MissionEdge. That is everything you see here. I do want to give you a quick glimpse at the other side of the site, the mission manager. This is what your coordinators have access to. It's what they're going to use to manage your data and accept all of your training credit requests and things like that. So let me flip over here. So we'll see here, I had just sent out this responder portal training survey. So this has all of the recipients and who responded and their responses and things like that. We can see all of the personnel, equipment, positions, PTBs, training. So there's a lot of functionality on this side of the site. It's a very powerful and complex system with a lot of data to back up the seemingly simple responder portal that you guys will be using day to day. Okay, and so that should be everything. Angela, do you want to open it up to any questions or discussion?
Sure. So there are several questions going through, and I'm trying to answer several of you who've not, so that you don't have your accounts. We will continue to follow up with all of you individually to create accounts. Most of you have them. Since you've put your email addresses in, I'll double check we have it entered correctly. But one thing I would say is check your spam filter to make sure it's not getting taken in your spam filter if you haven't seen the invitation yet. And if you're having trouble logging in, as John mentioned in his chat, he sent us an email to support. I can help you with some of the step-by-step stuff in the system, but if it's a login issue or things that are kind of a little bit more technical in nature, Chambers will be the one that can help out the best for that.
Yep.
So
Dave,
some of the,
Dave, can you bring up the slides and just have it sit on the support slide so people know where to get support if they need it while we just go over these last comments?
it's great.
Sure.
And some of the questions I think that are coming through here are less about the system and a little bit more about the Ross organization itself and kind of how some of these things will transpire as far as, you know, like who's doing what and when things will happen. I think that, you know, the way things have occurred going forward will stay unchanged as far as, you know, how a PTB sign off occurs and who signs off on different tasks and all of those sorts of things. But I do think that the system itself will offer us some ways that that can be done, maybe without an email, maybe it's a message that can happen, or, you know, an upload of documents versus an emailing of documents or things like that. So, you know, those are things that we will continue to work through and find more efficient or effective ways to do it as we get to know the system. So, you know, big answer to that is the overall process of things are not going to change. So let's just try to start going through some of the questions here. And Bill, feel free to jump in if there are answers to these questions that we need to address from, you know, programmatic standpoint. And again, if there are questions that we need to address outside of, you know, the MissionEdge side of the fence, we can address these on other training calls or on the quarterly call and things like that as well. So as far as who approves the training request, I think we took care of that. Question as far as, you know, the state Ross coordinators doing that or the larger CRCPD org. And then the question about receiving credit for life experience and training that's not observed by an evaluator. So that process is staying unchanged. The actual, you know, clicking of the buttons in MissionEdge will still occur. It's just that documentation, and I know if you want to add anything to this, Bill, you know, we've gone through that on a couple of quarterly calls on various ways people have documented that on cross-reference tables or different sign-offs. So when somebody does that, you don't have to necessarily go through every single item within MissionEdge and say, I did this, I did this. You can still create that crosswalk for your previous experience. And then you can upload that document in with a message that says, hey, here's my stuff. Can we go over it? And then we can go through and click a lot of those things all at once versus doing each of them individually. Whereas that individual piece might be the way you would do it because you're out in a deployment or you've just done something, you know, more individually with someone. Then you would make an evaluator request and you would actually ask for a sign off from that person based off of that thing that you did that maybe is 1 or 2 tasks. But when you're talking about the historical catch up, that is probably going to be better handled through a document that gets uploaded and a message that says, can I work with somebody on this, versus single sign offs. So Bill, do you want to add anything to that about kind of historical recognition and stuff?
Actually, Angela, I think you did great. I do agree with you wholeheartedly that, especially for somebody that's been in the business for a while, it will be something that likely is initiated on MissionEdge, but will take a one-on-one conversation to go through it all to make sure it's clear, and that can usually be arranged between you and your evaluator. For example, Catherine McClellan wrote in the chat that she had some documents for her advancement by type. She gave those to me. I'll work with her on that. And that's what we would hope you could do with your evaluators in your jurisdiction. And always, as Yaman pointed out, those can be identified in your jurisdiction, as well as they are any of the position holders who have a higher type. So obviously, if you're working on type 3, all the type 1 and 2s, you can work with them to see if any of them might be able to help you out if you're not able to get an evaluator within your jurisdiction. Over.
Excellent. Thanks, Bill. The next question has to do with who's updating the required courses. And so this is a more systematic question as far as, the courses that are listed on the 509 qualification document out on the national qualification system, as well as, what gets pulled, that's the basis of what gets pulled into the MissionEdge system, is all based on what's been approved for the Ross position in the NQS. And over time, some of those courses are no longer available or they've changed names. And so the larger Ross working group at CRCPD is working on that and hopefully going to try to create somewhat of a crosswalk of equivalent courses that, for those courses that are no longer there, or helping to reference to maybe what the new name of that course might be, and make sure that that keeps up to date. In the MissionEdge system itself, it will likely still say whatever that course is that is listed on the qualification document, but that document almost everywhere says or equivalent. So that's where we'll help to define what that equivalency is. So if you're seeing a course, there is no access to it anymore. Let us know if we're not aware of it or it's not on the crosswalk that eventually will get created here. And we'll try to help crosswalk that and update it when we can. But as anything that gets established at a period of time in a moving system, that's going to evolve over time. And it looks like there's a question, does everyone who goes to the Ross training get an invitation to join MissionEdge? And I think the idea is yes. And once somebody's been through PER 388, they will get an invitation to join MissionEdge. If they decide not to be Ross, they'll just be in there as an inactive person, logged as having gone to the course. But if they decide they do want to proceed, they'll be assigned to the appropriate state. They'll be issued either a type 4 whenever they've completed all the qualifications that are the prerequisites for the course there. And have that all documented, and then they'll be issued a type 3 PTB to work on. That said, only the people who've been through the course and are issued a PTB will be added to the system. We do have some Ross coordinators or agency having jurisdiction individuals who are operating their state organization that are not Ross that have accounts, but otherwise, the only people that can have access to the accounts are those state individuals and Ross who've been through class. So I know a lot of people are kind of on the cusp for going to a course as they come up over the next year. And as you go to course, if any of you are on this call, as you go to the course, you will then be invited to join the MissionEdge. And so unfortunately, that is where we have to kind of draw that line. For those of you that manage your state or have big groups of people that are on the standby waiting for the class, and you do want to manage those, as Brendan mentioned earlier in the call, there are ways that you as a state can get licenses to do that. And we can definitely have that discussion on how that integrates with what we're setting up here with the CRCPD Ross program.
Hey,
I'm going to
Angela.
scroll down. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things we ought to do, I'm reading these questions, is we should get a copy of the chat and make sure that we look at all of this for some programmatic questions that we need to resolve at the committee level. And thank you all for the great questions. Make sure you keep asking those, because we need to make sure that we're helping to resolve issues that might be a problem relative to your getting qualified and moving up in the Ross ranks. Over.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And feel free to jump in anytime here, because I do think that a lot of this will tie in really directly to how the program operates as a whole, right? And so I think, that kind of leads into, some of these questions that we can work on now that we have, historically, when you've requested Ross, and this, I'm talking to Becky Harisis's question here for Ross in your area. Historically, we've had just a few Ross in various states. And the way that you requested Ross was to email the FEMA Ross. Well, if those of you that remember One Responder, we did use the messaging feature in there for some communications, but it did not have a deployment capability. So this deployment capability is going to be a new thing for us. And so rather than having to send an email to the Ross, the FEMA Ross email address, and then having that go out to all of you and all of you reply to the email and then get an email back to say, are you still free? And all of that all can be handled now inside of the MissionEdge system. And so, as Bill mentioned, we're going to need to stop and say, what's the best way to work on this? And, the concept, Becky, is that we can, within your state, if you have Ross that you want to deploy within your own ranks in your state org, you can do all of that on your own, because you can create the event, you can deploy the Ross, you can do all of that. But if you're asking for other Ross, I think, we'll look at what that looks like in the system. I think the concept might be is that you would send a message to the CRCPD or with all of the pertinent details of what you want for that Ross or what you're needing for the deployment. You would create the event, and then we would send out the message at the higher level across all of the organizations. And when somebody said they were able to meet those designations in the system, we could then just deploy them right to your event, because we're all set up under the CRCPD organizational structure, we're all kind of sister organizations. And so we can, while all of you can't move people between each organization, we can at the CRCPD level. And so that will be able to be done, I think, all within the system, and take away some of that email traffic and such to that makes things more complicated on a deployment.
And Angela, I would just add that I think it's a great idea. I saw your question, Becky. If you're going to, work internally to get Ross from within your state or a neighboring state, and you've already worked out the details, go ahead and document it in MissionEdge first, so that you get practice using the deployment activities. And second, it gives us a record. One of the things that we try to do is create an annual report on the Ross, and we can use this to help us as a place to record a lot of things that we're doing and use that in that annual report. Over.
So the next question that kind of came up was, if someone doesn't have a PTB in the system, do they have to add it, or will everyone get a PTB file uploaded? So with that, this is a great question. Everybody's supposed to in the system have the PTB that we last knew that you had. So those of you that are a type 1 Ross, you don't have a PTB at all because you were just typed directly as a type 1. Those of you that are typed as a type 2 should have a, those of you that are, typed as a type 2 should have a type 1 PTB assigned to you. Those of you that are typed as a type 3 should have a type 2 PTB added to your account. And those of you that are new to the system should all have type 3 PTBs. If you don't have a PTB, and some of you don't, because I think some of you we added recently here, hold tight, work with your state Ross coordinator. Each state Ross organization can issue PTBs as well. And so they can give you that type 3 PTB that you're looking for. But we're going to go through, now that we have everyone in the system and people are accepting their accounts and we're getting kind of our foothold here, we'll be going back through to make sure everything looks correct. And from that perspective too, like I said at the beginning, if you are assigned to a state and it's not where you think you should be, then let us know as well, and we'll move you around. We took a bunch of different records that we had on all the ROS over the years and tried our best to replicate how we thought we were today. And we know things have potentially changed, which is also another benefit of the system, is that we're going to be able to, you'll be able to manage your affiliation and your contact information and all that stuff directly in here without having to, you know, have email traffic and version control on spreadsheets and such.
And Angela, I would just add that we want to make sure that it's not just the state ROS coordinators. A lot of you are just beginning your role as a state ROS coordinator. A lot of this is new. All of this is unpaid work. So we're going to continue from the CRCPD side to work at the national level to help with different things that need to get done. We'll help with individual states to help them build their capacity to assist the ROS in their state. So don't feel like you're alone in this if you are a state ROS coordinator, and don't rely on just those state ROS coordinators. If you're ROS, if that state ROS coordinator is new, they may not be able to do it just yet. Obviously, over the course of time, we expect our state ROS coordinators to get stronger, be able to do more, but we're in our infancy in both the use of MissionEdge and the use of state ROS coordinators to help us manage all the states' ROS. Over.
Excellent, thank you. So moving on to Sarah's question here. The MissionEdge portal seems useful in documenting training in those who have been deployed. And so it looks like there's some Hanford site and Columbia Generating Station, coordination with Oregon Department of Energy, and where the lead of that incident or emergency or drill would start and how you'd want to pull ROS into the system. So I think that some of those questions are up to all of you jurisdictionally, right, on that lead. But if there are aspects that are events that are not ROS, that are not ROS events potentially, then you know, there's some of that. We do have that kind of line that is in the CRCPD sand, for lack of a better term, to say that, you know, this is where ROS can be loaded and the types of events that are being put in there. So if you are an agency that might be initiating an event and you're not the state ROS coordinator, or you're not able to do that within there, reach out to me. I'll work with Brendan and we'll figure out what that looks like and what that needs to look like. And obviously we'll need to talk with your jurisdiction that has the ROS organization as well. But I think that that is definitely something that can be looked at. And I hope I'm interpreting that that question correctly.
Yeah.
If you have anything to add, feel free.
So I'll just add by, instead of typing it all out. I guess I felt like we need to incorporate or start to think about how ROS fits into the drills that we currently have annually. Because when a real event happens, and a real event actually did happen when at Hanford. So when a real event happens, we're not now confused about who the lead is, because in the drills we've always been the lead, and you know, there are already memorandums of understanding and grant money that goes into these drills. When a real event happens, we need to just make sure that the federal agencies and the state agencies all understand that we already have a system of agreements in place. and it's not that I'm saying that we need to stay the lead, but what I'm saying is that when a real event happens, I don't want there to be confusion. Not that it's my job, you know. It's actually Mark Reese who would want to make sure that there's no confusion between who's the lead. We just need to, I think, pull that into the drills so that when the real event happens, there isn't confusion. You know what I mean? Like, let's play that out in the drills so that we know how to play it out when a real event happens.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I see Hillary raised her hand, so I'm gonna let you add to that before I do my thoughts, Hillary.
Yeah. So luckily, Sarah, I am the coordinator for Oregon. And the way that Ross wouldn't take over, if we're following ICS, the incident commander would still be in charge. The Ross would just be there as a subject matter expert, right? And they would give their recommendations to the ops chief. And then the ops chief would give their recommendations to the incident commander, just like a safety officer or any other technical advisor we had on staff. And if you wanted to activate any ROS, all you'd have to do is, for you, contact me and I would activate them. So I still wouldn't be in charge. The ROS wouldn't be in charge. But that is a good idea that we should try to activate them for our upcoming drill.
But wouldn't that be DOE, Department of Energy, Federal Department of Energy, who would pull a Ross in? Would it? I don't think it would be, because we are just, we're in the room, but we're just the state liaison. And we do have, anyway, you probably, this is out of my realm. It's really sort of Mark Reese's realm to figure out the logistics of who's calling in who and how.
So if you remember back to the ICS courses, and I promise I won't take up much more time because we want to talk about mostly MissionEdge, but the ROS is a resource. So the incident commander or ops chief would be the one to request the resource. And then that request would go to me, and then I would see if it can be fulfilled. Does that make sense?
It does,
Okay.
but at the same time, I feel like because Oregon Department of Energy is in the ROS system, it gets confusing. Like, are we there now as a ROS, or are we there now as the state liaison? And who's
you would still
doing
be
what?
the state. You would still be the state liaison. The request would be for an external ROS to come in and be a ROS.
Yeah, so I'm gonna table this discussion. It's great that both of you are on here, and I know that you guys will have great follow-up on those jurisdictional things, but it's good for us to hear because I'm sure other states and other jurisdictions are thinking through this. I do want to focus back toward the MissionEdge system, but I will say too that it feels probably a little bit, keep in mind that this ROS organization is under CRCPD, and it's meant to help us manage qualifications and kind of internal deployments and deployments that are coming to the larger ROS organization. Just because you're creating an event in MissionEdge doesn't mean that you're, leading the requests or doing all those things. It's a way for the ROS community to make those requests more clearly designated and deploy people to them. I think ideally more and more jurisdictions begin to use MissionEdge, and it becomes a system-wide structure where another entity can put a request in for people on an event, and through partnerships and other types of setups, the ROS community can be tagged in as a resource request. But outside the MissionEdge system, those requests are still going to occur through EMAC or whatever other official resource request process occurs. MissionEdge is just a tool to help us keep things organized and know who's where and who's got what responsibility for what individuals. So I'm just going to kind of leave it there. There's way more we can go into on that. And I think, that is really, again, one of the benefits of having a system that gives us a little bit of structure. It gives us something to talk around on those things. So I'm going to pivot over to a technical question. It does look like there is, and I'm sorry if any of these gotten answered. I'm just working my way through the list. If there is a new MissionEdge message action, will the system automatically send you an SMS text message so you know to log in and take an action? Do you want to take that, Yaman or Dave?
Yeah, so when the message goes out, it will always at least go to your work emails. The person sending the message can choose. So you'll almost always get an email. The person sending the message can also decide if they want text notifications to go out, right? If it's urgent, they're probably going to also send text notifications. If it's maybe not so urgent, an email will suffice. So you'll almost always receive an email, and sometimes you will also receive a text, depending on the sender, which options they choose when they send the message.
Excellent, thank you. And I saw that you had answered in the chat as well, but it's good to have that information out there. I see a question about certifications being expanded. Again, if you look at the qualification document, it talks about CHP Part 1 and Part 2, and it's or equivalent, right? So as the Ross program evolves and grows and gets more people in, there are other ways and other certifications that can stand for those kind of documented items that are on the actual qualification sheet, but there is meant to be equivalency across other types of certifications and such. So that is hopefully answering your question there. We'll work through any specific questions there are as we move through. And then specifically under additional qualification requirements, how do we log or document experience? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Yaman, and again, I'm sorry if you've answered it, but is there something, a good way you've seen people doing that? I think we really are focusing on the training and the tasks as far as things that need to be sent in. But if you have kind of lessons learned from others that have done this, that might be helpful in this question.
Yeah, absolutely. So additional qualification requirements are treated like tasks in that an evaluator does have to sign them off. But how you go about doing so varies from organization to organization. If you have some kind of documentation that can show that, you can attach a document to your PTB. If you've worked with that person for X number of years, you can, it depends on the organization, but within MissionEdge, an evaluator has to sign that off. So it varies from org to org. There are different ways you can attach documents. You can show your MissionEdge deployment history could help, but it varies.
Okay, and I think that that's an area where we can work within the Ross organization and community about what adjustments to make, and what processes to look at. And I think that goes back to your additional part of the question there, Larry, is that, some of those other certifications aren't selectable in MissionEdge. We can add those, I think. I'm not speaking out of turn here. So as we determine within the program that we need those and where we need them to be placed in the system to be able to be selectable, we can definitely take care of that. All right, I think that's the
Angela,
end of the, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just good opportunity to mention something about our CRCPD Ross use of MissionEdge. First, we're very grateful to Chainbridge for giving CRCPD this particular use of MissionEdge for the Ross. It is just for the Ross, though. I saw a question in the chat about what if you're, for example, an industrial hygienist and you want to include that. We might be able to put that in as a record so that if we're looking for a Ross who's also an industrial hygienist, which would be great, we can do that. But it also could be that in your jurisdiction, maybe it's your city or your state, that you might find that others are using MissionEdge or another qualification management system to document the other qualifications in that jurisdiction. We also hope that some of you will look at MissionEdge, like I am in Vermont, to try to get the state to bring MissionEdge on for the management of all of our positions in the state in the incident command structure, incident management teams. If I do that, the state will have to work with Chainbridge to bring that in. And because it's a commercial product, it will be at whatever cost is appropriate for the level of service that they're going to get from Chainbridge for MissionEdge. So we're, again, very grateful that this thing that would probably cost us a good deal of money to incorporate is being given to us because Chainbridge believes in the mission of the Ross. As Brendan mentioned, they've been involved with us for all 10 years of our Ross program. But there are some limitations on that, and we want to make sure that you understand that. But there also is the ability in your jurisdiction to have it be more for your jurisdiction if your jurisdiction can find that valuable. Over.
That's a great point. Thanks, Bill, for wrapping that up. And I think that's a good segue. Brendan, you're still on and you wanted to do any kind of final wrap up on this, or if there's any final questions or comments. I think we've reached the end of the training session. So Brendan, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks again for everyone's time on this. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Bill, for what you just said. Yes, if anyone has questions about MissionEdge, whether they're technical, how do I use certain functionality, you've got the support emails here. Anything organizational or ROS related, obviously, will go through Angela. If you or your organization is interested in exploring more about MissionEdge and how it can be used, feel free to reach out. You can use the support at missionedge.com to get a hold of us. Happy to have a conversation and walk through that with everyone. That's all I got. Please enjoy your weekend and hope to talk to you soon.
All right, thank you so much. I think barring any other questions, we'll go ahead and let you drop. Again, this recording will be available for any of your colleagues that missed this. And we will be in touch with more development and more integration of this as we all learn the system more now that we've kicked it off. So thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.